Good morning, everyone. I'm Beth Coronel, and I'll be your host for this morning's forum. Welcome to the third Sustainability Forum, brought to you by the Environment Committee of the Phoenix Foundation. Our topic for today's very timely forum is the new wave, transitioning single-use plastics to a circular economy. But before we start, please join us in singing the Philippine National Anthem. At this point, I'd like to call on the chairman of the Environment Committee, Mr. Luis Juan Oreta, to formally open the forum.
Good morning and welcome to today's Sustainability Forum on Single-Use Plastics. A few months ago, Philippine waterways figured prominently in the press, and this prominence had nothing to do with the pristine nature of those rivers. In fact, it had a lot to do with their contribution to marine plastic waste in the oceans. According to published reports, the Philippines was one of Asia's largest contributors to marine plastic pollution, with the following landing in the top 10 largest emitting rivers in Asia, reportedly coming from the Philippines, namely the Pasig River and the Tullahan River, which are both in Metro Manila, the Mekawayan River in Bulacan, the Libmanan River in Camarines Sur, the Rio Grande de Mindanao River, and the Agno River in Pangasinan. The report said that Philippine rivers contribute over 356,000 metric tons of plastic wastes to the oceans annually, and that topping this list was the 27-kilometer Pasig River, which contributed over 63,000 tons of plastics to the ocean every year through Manila Bay. What is sad to note is that in the past, government had made an effort to rehabilitate the Pasig through the creation of the Pasig River Rehabilitation Commission. And in fact, the commission had a successful run, and in 2018 was awarded the first Asia River Prize Award by the International River Foundation. It was therefore unfortunate that President Duterte deemed the river uncleanable and ordered the dissolution of the commission. This notwithstanding, it is noteworthy that the recent passage by the House of Representatives last July of House Bill 9147 would prohibit the production, import, and sale of many single-use packaging products. If the bill, as drafted, is passed by the Senate, non-compostable plastic products like plates, cups, and cutlery, and sachets would be phased out within 4 years. And other products such as straws, stirrers, and bags thinner than 10 microns within 1 year. Still, a lot of questions remain. Why hasn't the Senate acted on this bill? Is the proposed bill sufficient to address the problem of single-use plastics? What is the business sector doing about it, even as our rivers continue to deteriorate? Do our surrounding Asian neighbors face a similar problem, and what have they done about it? What affordable technologies are available to the Philippines to address this problem? And finally, what can private individuals do? We will be discussing these matters today, and hopefully you will come away with a 360-degree view of the issue. We are therefore very pleased, and our thanks go to our fantastic lineup of speakers for accepting the invitation to speak before us and you, and to educate us about the enormity of this problem. Our Master of Ceremonies will give you more information about our resource persons before their turn to speak. But before passing the virtual mic back to our MC, please allow me to thank a few persons for helping put this event together. As always, my thanks go to the members of the Environment Committee, especially to Marivic Sugapong, Umi Yaptinchay, Tony Boy Ongsiaco, Jeng Pascual, and Ebo Tan for their invaluable help in putting this impressive lineup of speakers together. Let me also thank Beth Coronel, Frank Isaac, and Erwin Avante for volunteering to handle MC and Q&A moderator duties. As you can see, and I say this with pride, this has been a bootstrapped, self-help, do-it-yourself operation resulting in maximum output in the finest Finex traditions. My thanks as well go to the leadership of the Finex Foundation for continuing its support for the committee and its programs. The Manila Times under Blanca Mercado has also been supportive of this event by promoting it and giving it needed publicity, and for that we thank the Manila Times. Thank you very much, Blanca. Finally, I thank you, the participants, for signing up for this event. If events like these are something you think worthwhile, please let us know, as we'd like to continue coming out with events such as these to showcase environmental and sustainability issues. Let us know how we can do better and what issues you'd like to put up for discussion. And with that, let me turn the mic back to our MC, Beth Coronel. I wish you all a pleasant day filled with fruitful discussions.
Thank you, Chito. It is a jam-packed morning, as Chito mentioned. We're honored to have a group of very knowledgeable speakers who are definitely experts in their respective fields. Our first speaker is Ms. Jaslyn Lee. She's the current Southeast Asia Regional Coordinator, Circular Economy for Plastics for the World Wildlife Fund. She's driving WWF's initiative called No Plastic in Nature by 2030 and the extended producer responsibility engagement with businesses and governments in 6 Southeast Asian countries. Jaslyn holds a master's degree in economics from the University of Malaya. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Jaslyn Lee.
Thank you, Beth. Please allow me to share my screen. I just want to thank the organizer for having me today. And again, a very good morning from Kuala Lumpur. Happy to see everyone here today. I'm Jaslyn, the Southeast Asia API Regional Coordinator, currently based in Kuala Lumpur. So please allow me to start my presentation with a brief sharing on the plastic sector on a global context. So while plastic pollution is a global issue, studies have shown that around 60% of the marine debris enters the ocean from just 5 countries in Asia. And across the 3 countries, for example, Malaysia, Thailand, and the Philippines, there is a total of over 5 million tons of plastic produced every year. And from this amount, only less than 30% of the plastics are being recycled, leading to nearly 6 billion of the materials value of plastics lost every year. So this data is actually based on the recent study published by the World Bank. And as the transportation and power industries are slowly moving away from fossil fuel to renewable energy, there's still a growing demand for petrochemicals and oil from the plastic production industry. So the plastic sector will dominate the growth in the use of petrochemicals as a feedstock for plastic production through 2050 under the business as usual practices. And the production will be predominantly for the production of single-use plastics. And based on the study by CIEL, the plastic sector alone will already consume up to 90% of the world's remaining carbon budget if it's still under the business as usual practices by the private sector. So as you can see from here, there's an urgent need for a revision of the existing system to demand greater responsibility and accountability from the producer through extended producer responsibility system on a national level. And so this is a recent study published by WWF on the true cost of plastics. So plastics is a significant emitter of greenhouse gas emission with the emission resulting from the plastic production in 2019 imposed a cost of more than $171 billion. And across its life cycle of the plastics, plastic is actually responsible for generating 1.8 billion tons of greenhouse gas emission. And as you can see from here, the minimum cost of the plastic produced in 2019 alone will occur over its lifetime is estimated at 3.7 trillion US dollars if we take into consideration the societal lifetime costs of the plastics, including the greenhouse gas emission costs, the impact to the society, health costs, waste management costs, as well as the mismanaged waste costs. So it will add it up to 3.7 trillion US dollars. And more than 90% of that cost is not included in the market price of the plastics. And just imagine the lifetime cost of the plastic produced in 2019 is actually more than the GDP in India. So what are the main drivers of plastic pollution? Mainly because the life cycle cost of the plastics is currently not incorporated into the current market price of plastics. Hence, it is being produced massively, mainly due to its low cost comparing to other materials. And the products and packaging produced are catered mainly to single-use application. And of course, this is mainly due to the demand from the consumers as well for greater conveniences. Plastic waste is traded globally across countries with limited collection and recycling infrastructure. This is especially where the plastic waste are being exported from the advanced developed countries to developing countries, where most of these developing countries have very limited infrastructure, even for recycling activities. And of course, economic growth is outpacing the waste management capacity in many countries, especially in the countries in Southeast Asia region, including Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and even Philippines as well. And of course, last but not least, the lack of accountability for the waste management and end-of-life management for the packaging and products produced by the producers. So in Southeast Asia, the waste management has always been the sole responsibility of the public and the government, of course, and the system has proven to be highly inefficient. So there's a need for to envision a new future state to shift from linear model to a circular model through redesigning of packaging and products, reduction of material use, and of course to encourage for reuse model to improve recovery, and of course to also increase the recycling rates. So there's also a need to impose and enforce stringent regulations and policies, a very clear regulations and policies with clear timeline on plastic production and end-of-life management by producers. And of course, this could be done by through the implementation of extended producer responsibility scheme on a national level, where all the producers will have to be part of it. So I just want to share with everyone the financial risks and opportunities arising from plastic action and inaction can be very substantial, with the potential increase of, for example, the increase of operational and compliance costs arising from, for example, the imposing of green taxes, bans, trade restrictions by the governments from different countries on national or even on a regional level. For example, there are three risks that we are looking at when it comes to the financial risk assessment. So the first one is definitely on the physical risks, so when it comes to the plastic related sector, the financial institutions will have to look into the carbon emissions by the companies or even businesses that the financial institutions or investors are investing in. And of course, the tourism is heavily and highly impacted by the plastic pollution in Southeast Asia and of course in other regions as well. And of course, the plastic life cycle is a very significant contributor to climate change through the emissions of greenhouse gas emission. And if we may look at the transition risks, I think all of us is aware that the regulators and policymakers are working at an unusually accelerated rate on plastic-related issues by imposing a more stringent regulations and policies on a national and on a regional level. And of course, the reputational risks arising from plastic criticism has to be taken into consideration as well. And last but not least, the material price volatility and material supply of virgin plastic materials is very unstable as well. So these are the few risks that the financial institutions and of course investors will have to assess before looking into investing specific companies, especially those who are involved in the plastic and packaging sector. So what's in it for producers, and why is there an urgent need for producers to adopt a greater commitment and implement corporate actions to shift to circular model, and of course to transition to a circular economy? So the first one is that, as I have highlighted earlier as well, the regulators are working on plastic related issues by imposing bans or even imposing green taxes, and stringent regulatory framework are being imposed on the production and waste management activities on a national level. And I'd just like to share with everyone some of the recent commitments from the financial sectors and investors and even standard organizations. As you can see from here, the recent financial institutions and investors' actions related to plastics and the circular economy indicate a growing interest in the issue of plastic pollution. And of course, this is set to change the business outlook from moving forward. So as you can see from here, the Morgan Stanley is committed to the prevention, reduction, and removal of 50 million metric tons of plastic waste from landfills by 2030. And there are 26 financial institutions with 4.2 trillion of assets under management endorse the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's New Plastics Economy. And recently, the GRI introduced stronger relations between materials and waste in identifying and managing waste-related practices, impacts throughout the value chain. So this is also applicable to plastic-related waste as well. So how financial institutions and investors can play an influential role. The first one is to engage the companies to support them to effectively communicate the value of their actions, and to encourage the disclosures of the companies as well, to highlight the financial materiality of plastics and packaging, and advise portfolio companies on how to engage with the issue. And the second is to evaluate the impact and financial institutions and investors can also act as motivators to drive plastic action to transition the business model from linear to circular, looking into plastic footprint, material use, waste management strategies, and of course, the involvement of the companies in the EPR system and collaborations, for example. And last but not least is to engage with companies and clients in the plastic value chain to determine how they are managing and mitigating the risks related to plastics and packaging. And of course, to embrace opportunity in to commit to the new plastic economy by first eliminating the production and use of problematic and unnecessary plastics. Encourage companies to innovate to ensure that plastics are reusable, recyclable, and of course, compostable. And the third one is to set ambitious target for post-consumer recycled content for all plastic packaging. And finally, to circulate materials to keep plastics in the loop for as long as possible. So I just want to share with everyone as well some of the proposed set of indicators for assessment by financial institutions and investors. So I'll just pick out a few examples. So if you would like to have a look at the complete assessment table, I'll be able to share with everyone after this session as well. So I'll just skip this slide to go to the next one. I would like to share with everyone a case study from Malaysia. So the Association of Islamic Banking and Financial Institutions in Malaysia have come together to develop a manufacturing sectoral guide. So this guidance is for implementing impact-based assessment for sectors, especially for oil and gas, other manufacturing sectors, including iron and steel, and of course, plastic manufacturing sector has been included as part of the guidance as well. And this guideline is in line with the Bank Negara Malaysia climate change and principle-based taxonomy, which was issued as reference for financial institutions in assessing and classifying economic activities that contribute to climate change mitigation and adaptation. And the sector in focus has been selected based on its significant contribution to the Malaysian economy, the impact to the environment, social issues, and of course, the potential significant exposure to transition risk. So the guidance recommends an inclusive approach to adoption and implementation. So it is very critical to financial institution stakeholders, including the investors, to create a common understanding between the investors and the companies, clients, towards a meaningful outcome together. So I would just like to wrap up my sharing for today to just share some of the recent EPR progress and development in Southeast Asia. So in Indonesia, the government has endorsed EPR policy on a national level. So this is done under the Ministerial Degree of Environment and Forestry in 2019. And a roadmap to waste reduction by producers was launched in 2019 as well. And of course, a voluntary PRO, IPRO, was formed by 6 consumer brands, and they have made public commitment that they will take responsibility for the end of life management of their own products and packaging. In Malaysia, recently the Economic Planning Unit of Malaysia, which is under the Prime Minister's Office, has adopted the EPR scheme in the 12th Malaysia Plan. So this was published in September this year. And the EPR is also adopted in the Circular Economy Roadmap for Plastics, led by the Ministry of Environment and Water. So it is now being tabled in the Cabinet, waiting for final approval. I'll just skip the recent development in the Philippines. I'm sure everyone is aware of the recent updates in the country. So, in Singapore, the National Environment Agencies so they are committed to implement the EPR by 2025. Currently, the government NEA is looking into the implementation of the Project Refund Scheme by 2022. In Thailand, unfortunately, not so much development yet, but there are several corporate alliances were formed to advocate for EPR system. And of course, in Vietnam, the government has adopted EPR in the revised version of Law on Environmental Protection. And a voluntary PO is also formed by 10 consumer brands, and they also made public commitment that they will take responsibility for the end of life management of their own products and advocating for EPR. So that's it for my sharing for today. I look forward to answer to any of your questions. Thank you. And over to Ms. Beck.
Thank you, Jaslyn, for the regional view and the suggested action points to address the problem with plastic. We'll have time for more questions a little later. We can move now to our second speaker. Our next speaker will give us his view on how the government is addressing this issue. We have Commissioner Crispian Lau, who is the Vice Chairman of the National Solid Waste Management Commission under the Office of the President. He serves also as a private sector representative for the recycling industry. He is a co-convener and founding president of the Philippine Alliance for Recycling and Material Sustainability, or PARMS. This alliance brought together stakeholders in the supply and waste value chain with civil society and the academe in partnership with the government in order to develop and implement a comprehensive program to increase resource recovery and reduce landfill dependence towards zero waste. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Commissioner Crispian Lau.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. I believe you should be able to see my slides right now. I'm going to have two segments in this presentation. One is a government perspective, and the second part, being from private sector, is to show you what private sector is doing about this problem. Okay, just to quickly give you a landscape of the law that created or that manages ecological solid waste in the Philippines. Well, the Philippines is said to have one of the most comprehensive and well-written law. And again, RA 9003 was enacted in 2000 and implemented in 2001 after the IRR has been released. It is under the Office of the President, chaired by the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, with 14 government agencies and 3 private sector representatives. The private sector representatives would have a representative from the recycling industry, manufacturing and packaging industry, and lastly, from the NGO or environmental group sector. Just to show you some of the mandatory provisions as prescribed by law, some of these mandatory provisions would include segregation at source, segregated collection. So whatever is segregated at home should be separately collected by the local government unit. And just to highlight that the local government unit, cities and municipalities, has the primary responsibility in waste management in their respective areas. For municipal solid waste, for commercial and industrial, it is usually managed by the companies or the commercial establishments themselves. Now, there's a mandatory waste diversion set at 25% in the law, but the Commission has since set it at 50%. Mandatory also is the establishment of barangay materials recovery facilities to manage compostables and recyclables at the smallest unit of government, which is at the barangay level, and closure of open and controlled dump sites by 2006, and only sanitary landfills as final disposal of residual waste. Now, we aggressively or actively promote the waste hierarchy, which is avoidance of waste generation, reduce, reuse, recycling, recovery or treatment of waste. And if we are able to do that, actually a small fragment of the waste should actually be disposed in sanitary landfills. The Commission has also issued the waste characterization, waste analysis and characterization study. Here you would at least be able to identify where your materials belong to, whether it's a biodegradable, recyclable, residuals, or special waste. No? For residuals, we have broken it down into two. First is the residuals with potential for recycling, so that we can recover resources from that. And the special waste would include hazardous waste coming from the households, healthcare waste coming from hospitals, and bulky waste that would need special collection prior to for disposal. No? Just to give you a view on where we are as far as solid waste management is concerned. The Philippines generates about 44,000 tons per day in 2019. And in Metro Manila, it's about 10,000 tons per day. This is the composition of waste. The bulk really still in biodegradables. We have 27 or 28% of recyclables. And the bigger challenge to us really is the 17 to 18% of residuals. No? And if you look at the sources of waste, majority, 56.7% is coming from households. You have for commercial, it includes the public markets and institutional. No? So this in the red zone is actually managed by the LGU. The rule is if the public market is operated by the local government unit, then it is the local government unit that manages it. Now, just to show you compliance updates to the RA 9003, when you look at barangay material recovery facilities, as of 2015, it was only 31%. There is a modest increase as of 2021, and this has reached, the DNR has reported that this has reached 35% as of 2021. Now, how about disposal facilities? No? This is where really these two areas would be where the big gaps are. If you look at the disposal facilities, in 2015, only 13% or 14% has access to sanitary landfills. Now, it has increased to 31%. The DNR has recently announced also that they have ordered the closure of all open and controlled dump sites. However, having said that, there's still this big gap, as to proper disposal facilities, and this is probably where technology and the private sector investments can come in. If you look at this is a study that we did in 2013, where we looked into plastics and residuals with potential for diversion. We have identified that 4% out of that the total waste can still be diverted out and converted into resources through alternative technologies. And a lot of those are single-use plastics. And then on non-environmentally acceptable products, the Commission has always been criticized of not issuing the list of non-environmentally acceptable products. The law prescribes that within 1 year, the Commission should have submitted a list or prepared a list of non-environmentally acceptable products. However, there's this provision of law that unless there are alternatives available to cost consumers at no more than 10% greater cost, then we cannot declare these products as non-environmentally acceptable products. The bigger challenge really is to find alternatives to plastics that are fit to the functional element and that would meet this cost provision of the law. And of course, prior to banning or declaring products as non-environmentally acceptable, the law prescribes in the IRR that it should be supported by scientific, environmental, technical, and economic information and technical studies. No? So these are life cycle assessment and economic analysis. And more importantly, the agreement needs to be by consensus. And it needs to be, and if we cannot get, a consensus of all parties, then it has to be put in a vote with 2/3 majority vote before it can be passed. We did a life cycle assessment of carrying bags. No, when we looked at carrying bags or plastic carrier bags as compared to its alternative, we have found in the result of the LCA study conducted by the academic community, JB Biona of De La Salle University, that compared to plastic, the paper would the usual substitute of paper is actually has a higher overall environmental impact, while the study wanted to look at indigenous biomes, it was not available in the Philippines. So it's a non-woven PP reusable bag that was used that poses very good results as far as environmental effects if you use it 100 times. But then the cost of PP woven bags would be much higher than the 10% cap. And for that reason, plastic bags was not declared as non-environmentally acceptable. The Commission has since issued in 2020 some resolutions. First is a resolution to ban the use of what they called unnecessary single-use products in government offices. And this is the list. I'll just highlight that 4 agencies out of the 12 in attendance were against, well, the industry is against it, and there are 2 government agencies that abstained. And then there is the issuance in 2021 declaring straws and stirrers as non-environmentally acceptable. Again, this did not get the consensus. Again, this is for coffee stirrers and straws. The industry definitely did not support it. No? Just to update everyone, the National Plan of Action for the Prevention and Reduction and Management of Marine Litter has already been approved or endorsed by the Secretary of Environment. And this is the department circular that approves such. If you look at the matrix of strategies, the beauty of it is that it is clear, it provides clear-cut direction and policies. And this is where the industry can really come in, which is strategy 2 on mainstreaming circular economy and sustainable consumption and production in line with our SDG 12 goals of the National Economic and Development Authority, and also enhancing recovery and recycling coverage. When we look at plastics and the circular economy, we really need to transition from a linear economy to an economy with feedback loops before we can fully go circular. And feedback loops entails us to look into energy recovery as an option, as a short-term option. And of course, circular economy Asia also promotes reuse of resources, and that is the focus of plastics. And if you transition plastics into a circular economy. Now, let me shift my hat now to my private sector role. PARMS, or the Philippine Alliance for Recycling and Material Sustainability, came out with an Zero Waste to Nature Ambition 2030. This was supported by different industry associations and some companies and even the NGOs. And basically, there is the 4R approach of reduction, reuse, recover, and recycle at the heart of the Zero Waste to Nature ambition. We looked into packaging and we looked into what we need to do to shift packaging and to achieve the Zero Waste to Nature by 2030. And of course, on the upper side, we focused on rigids. You would see that the red zone would be more undesirable, undiverted waste as it is right now. So we are looking for rigids to be fully recovered and recycled by 2030 if the roadmap is realized. And the bigger challenge for everybody really is on the flexibles. We have also looked into flexibles and the different potential investments or technology that can come in to meet these goals. So we are doing it into approach. One is looking at the feedstock that goes into the system. If you improve the feedstock getting into the system, then there's a lot of things that we can do with the material. In our diversion roadmap, now we're looking at short, medium, and long term. In the short term, we want to apply what is already available, which is co-processing facilities. And a lot of companies have already been sending their materials to co-processing facilities. We are looking at labeling standards and diversion output-based EPR, if this is in place, we can see a big sharp increase in trajectory where you would see now some technologies coming in towards our ambition of 100% in 2030. What are the enabling policies that are needed? An EPR system that is fit for the Philippines, single PRO, multiple waste diverters under a competitive, standardized, transparent, accountable, and inclusive credit screen. To be honest, we are not in support of a fee-based EPR system because the tendency really is for companies just to pay the fees and forget about the responsibility. So what we want to happen is to, and there are a lot of pilots that are successful right now that are able to divert waste. No? Then, of course, we wanted to promote or to establish national recycling labeling standards for packaging. We need to shift from low diversion value flexibles to high diversion value flexibles. The biggest challenge with waste management is that if there's no value, nobody's going to pick it up. If we put a value to it, no, and if we shift it to high diversion value, then there is that potential for collection. And we have pilots that prove this already. And then economic incentives needs to happen to drive investments in recycling and waste processing, and instruments to drive market uptake of products. Now, this would be more on incentives, no, to really drive the market for recycled materials. Our study revealed that the benefit to people, planet, and profit would be an estimated 15.1 billion in infrastructure investment, 4,000 new green jobs, and more importantly, 5.2 billion of annual additional income for the informal waste pickers and the barangay recovery facilities. So I'll end my presentation here and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Commissioner Crispian. As we have all heard, our speakers consistently emphasize the need to shift from a linear to a circular economy to solve the plastic problem. We now have representatives from the Department of Science and Technology. But before that, we'd like to acknowledge DOST Secretary Fortunato de la Peña for sending his team to participate in our forum today. Our next speaker, Dr. Enrico Paringit, is the current Executive Director of the Philippine Council for Industry, Energy, and Emerging Technology Research and Development of the DOST. He holds a BS degree in Geodetic Engineering and an MS degree in Remote Sensing from the University of the Philippines. He is also a Doctor of Engineering obtained from the Tokyo Institute of Technology. He's here to talk about the various technologies that will address the plastic problem. We will be showing a video presentation prepared by Dr. Paringit.
Our take. A pleasant morning to everyone. On behalf of the Secretary of the Department of Science and Technology, Secretary Fortunato T. de la Peña, we would like to thank the FINEX Research and Development Foundation for inviting us to this forum to shed light on what we are doing to address the challenges that the country faces relative to single-use plastics. We are happy to share with you the initiatives from the Department of Science and Technology relative to R&D and how we as a nation can contribute to the circular economy. According to the World Economic Forum, business, governments, and citizens around the world are increasingly recognizing the challenges caused by our take, make, and dispose approach to production and consumption. In 2019 alone, over 92 billion tons of waste materials are extracted, processed, and contributing to about half of our global CO2 emissions. So the resulting waste, including plastics, textiles, food, electronics, and more, are taking a toll to the environment and to human health. The circular economy promotes the elimination of waste and the continual safe use of natural resources. It offers an alternative that can yield up to about $4.5 trillion in economic benefits by 2030. Achieving this transition requires, of course, unprecedented collaboration, given that today only 8.6% of the world is circular. It is in this light that we are spearheading here at the UST several initiatives to address the single-use plastics problem in our country with a whole-of-government approach, and to find alternatives and provide solutions and opportunities to industries and communities dependent on the use of plastic or plastic products. Plastics pervade the lives of Filipinos as it is used in various aspects of life. It is widespread and intrusive material that is used by a multitude of industries and in the manufacturing as well as in the packaging of numerous products. Here in the Philippines, industries such as electronics, construction, food, cosmetics, packaging, and automotive industries are aligned with the viability of the plastic industry. The majority of plastic companies are situated in Metro Manila, particularly in Caloocan, Malabon, Navotas, Valenzuela area, while others are from Manila, Pasig, and Calabarzon region. Of course, there are also some areas in Iloilo and Cebu, in the Visayas, and in Davao as well in Mindanao. A majority of plastics that we use are non-biodegradable and over time break into smaller pieces that enter the natural environment, especially in the bodies of water and landfills. In fact, the Philippines has been touted as one of the world's worst offenders on marine plastic pollution, with about 0.28 to about 7.75 million tons of plastics per year are entering the oceans and coastal areas of Manila Bay. This is coming from the United Nations Environmental Program and coordinating body of the seas of East Asia. Moreover, a 2020 report from the Global Alliance Incinerator Alternatives, or GAIA, reveals that the country uses almost 60 billion of sachets every year. Through science, technology, and innovation, we are therefore finding ways to address the solid waste management, and of course, finding environmentally acceptable alternatives to single-use plastics. We are taking this challenge seriously. You know, one of the main drivers of the DOST's environmental protection activities is our initiative that are geared towards a green economy. We can frame the numerous projects and initiatives that DOST supported into 4 key tracks for easier recollection. The first is Think Green, which is understanding and planning for a circular economy. This is to support projects that enable us to understand the challenges better. The second is Make Green, which includes developing clean processes and technologies, and at the same time, at the time of the production, with the thought of reducing waste at the source. Turn Green, which is getting value from wastes. This effort is geared towards converting the enormous waste into something that can actually create or add value. Keep Green aims at treating waste at their final destination or fate. Underneath each track are some of the titles of these projects that we have supported. Some of them have been completed while others are ongoing. Let me just give you a few examples for each one. The Think Green programs were primarily developed to help us understand and plan for a circular economy. The Envitex scoping study is one of the approaches that we've used to identify key pollutants in an area and options for waste management. So our researchers have done studies, collaborative studies, and reach areas like Valenzuela City to gather data and survey industrial plants that to determine the proper waste management technology appropriate for industries located in this region. So also, let me just mention that Project Iwasto under the I Am for Manila Bay program, which we have supported, aims to describe and assess the solid waste management activities in selected cities that are part of the the Manila Bay watershed, and of course develop integrated solid waste information and technology management systems, considering of course the current conditions and future scenarios. Under the Invitex program, we have the FETP, which utilizes the science-based, transdisciplinary, and inclusive strategies in assessing the sustainability and developing the Philippine Knowledge Action Program for sustainability. The action plan includes road mapping, strategic communications, youth education, capacity building in sustainability science and sustainability practices, and science-based policy recommendation. From scoping studies under Invitex, we were able to come up with new R&D projects that are leaning towards cleaner and greener processes and technologies. We are also exploring the use of cocoa water to be used for ready-to-drink beverages from valorized marine coconut water discarded by the industry. This product will be enhanced using additives and health ingredients such as ginger or turmeric in order to increase its nutritional value, add to its premium value, and improve marketability to the beverage. This product will also train industry partners in the process for the manufacturing of developed mature coconut water beverage with the company's aim to practice circular utilization of resources. For Make Green projects, we invested on research that will deploy green technologies. These are technologies that can provide substitute to existing products that are highly petroleum based. It is keeping with the idea that waste should be considered from the beginning. An example of this strategy is the development of the green degradable polymers from plant-based oils as opposed to petroleum. Moreover, an investigation on the subsequent functionalization and utility of heavy metal sequestrants are also being conducted. So by making degradable polymers from plant-based materials, we can be carbon neutral and reduce hazards to the environment at the same time. Our researchers from the DOST Industrial Technology Development Institute developed technologies also for biodegradable thermoplastics that are based on the various indigenous materials like starch, chitosan, and bacterial cellulose. These are advantageous because they degrade by natural processes and are strengthened through locally developed nanoclay. Another advantage of this kind of technology is that it produces products using traditional plastic processing equipment. So our current plastic manufacturers can actually use their existing equipment to create these types of biodegradable products. Turn Green projects, on the other hand, are our R&D investments that turn wastes that have almost zero value to something that's more useful and even value added. For an example of this is the UPLB project, the UP University of the Philippines Los Baños project, which transforms agricultural residues like corn stover, sugarcane, bagasse, and banana pseudostem into what they call a polyhydroxylate or PHA, which is bio-based and 100% biodegradable. These technologies do not only reduce waste, but also put value to them by developing through the development using the right processes. Our researchers are also developing electrocatalyst components from direct ethanol fuel cells or DEFC from waste biomass, like biochar from rice straws and watermelon peels. Our researchers are fabricating a DEFC powered textile-based supercapacitor supported emergency LED flashlight with cell phone charging USB ports. So they're also developing developing fabric supercapacitors by coating cotton indigenous fabric substrates with biochar and conducting polymers as its electroactive material. The project also utilizes biochar derived from rice husks and abaca waste. So this is a electroactive material for fabric-based electrode composites for energy storage devices. The UST also funded the establishment of green packaging laboratories to serve as a venue for collaborative R&D on the development of new packaging materials for renewables and indigenous raw materials, biofilms or bioplastics from agricultural wastes, and the recovery or recycling of packaging into new materials. So the thought is that through this facility, we can practice the concept of a circular economy where materials can actually be redesigned or reused to manufacture other products. The UST ITDI is also developing several technologies on recycling plastics and turning them into materials of higher value. This includes upcycled wastes that are turned into furniture, natural fiber thermoplastic composites, bricks, plant boxes, and tabletops. The Keep Green strategy or track are our portfolio projects that are into waste treatment as their final fate, on their final fate. This can be considered as the last resort measure for wastes that would no longer see any opportunities for reusing, recycling, or even upcycling included in the Turn Green track earlier. We are supporting technologies that will allow us to dispose wastes ultimately, but with the added benefit of getting energy from these residual wastes. So as an example, again, at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, they have set up a waste-to-energy facility by direct combustion as a possible solution to the ever-increasing municipal solid waste production in the Philippines. Here, a 25 kilowatt waste-to-energy facility was established and is fed with the solid waste generated there in their local government, and is proposed to be integrated into the solid waste management plan of the university. Our plan here is to help proliferate this kind of technology, especially for local government units that are currently hosting landfills, but maybe looking on ways how to augment their energy supply. The UST is ready to support the deployment of expertise developed from running this waste-to-energy facility at UPLB to serve as a guide in properly sizing, and operating these kinds of facilities. Another example included in our Keep Green facility or Keep Green track is our wastewater treatment systems and bioreactors that were set up in Boracay to help the island Paradise manage its waste. The facility has a carrying capacity of 1 ton, and these technologies can easily be replicated elsewhere, especially in other tourist destinations. In response to the call of the Plastic Industry Association for scientific basis for phasing out the single-use plastics, we are currently supporting the assessment of potentially non-environmentally acceptable products, or NEP, or packaging through the conduct of what we call the life cycle assessment of the HDPE and LLDPE grocery bags and polystyrene paper, which will assess the life cycle environmental impacts and environmental impacts of the production, use, and disposal of these grocery bags that you usually see from Metro Manila supermarkets, and identified material and energy usage, emissions, waste flows of the products, processes, or services over its entire life cycle to determine the environmental performance. The expectation is that by the end of the life cycle study, we will be able to come up with key recommendations as to the proper disposal, including the phasing out of target products, the phasing in of suitable alternatives as shown earlier, and of course the timing, so that the affected industries could actually be prepared. We believe that the projects that we have shown here earlier could provide viable options as we undergo this transition. Following the DOST's harmonized research and agenda program in consultation with the stakeholders, DOST spearheaded the development of the Sustainable S&T Solid Waste Management Roadmap with a vision of a circular economy with a solid waste pollution-free environment. To achieve or to in line with this roadmap, we estimate that we'll be investing 110 million pesos more to be allocated from 2022 to 2026 to deploy various strategies that experts and specialists in solid waste management recommended. Guided by this roadmap, we intend to upskill institutions with training programs on sustainable solid waste management and develop more technologies through R&D, such as alternative materials to plastic-based packaging. We are also looking into upcycling and recycling innovations, which will create a bridge between industries and community and technologies for the detection and treatment of microplastics and marine litter. PShared also recognizes that it's essential to establish a facility for the identification and characterization of microplastics and biodegradability testing of plastics, among others. To strengthen all of our initiatives towards this cause, we see the value of policies and regulations to be put in place and enforced strategically, of course, with the right support from science-based advice and technologies. DOST takes its role by heart by providing innovative solutions that would allow us to seamlessly adapt and practice green value and technology that will navigate through these challenging times. Our objective of having a greener future necessitates the collaborative work of different government agencies, of course, our partners from the academic and research institutions, and civil society in using science, technology, and innovation in crafting our policies, plans, and even in decision making. New technologies and new systems, especially in the new normal, make it imperative for us to create new behaviors, practices, and even ways of living that will better support our environment as well as the economy. We hope that through this presentation in your forum, we can gain more partners to collaborate with us to achieve these endeavors. Maraming salamat po at mabuhay tayo po lahat.
Thank you, Dr. Paringit. At this point, we have quite a number of questions coming in, and we'd like to call back our speakers to the Zoom screen. Ms. Jaslyn Lee, Dr. Enrico Paringit, Commissioner Crispian Lau for the Q&A session. They'll be joined by Dr. Annabel Briones, who is the current director of the Industrial Technology Development Institute of the DOST. And to serve as panel moderator is our past Phoenix president, Mr. Frank Isaac. Frank, over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Beth. Am I coming in now? Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you, Frank.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank our resource persons for their expert advice and maybe the insightful presentations. It's so hard to absorb all of this in just 20, 30 minutes. It took me some time to probably put these things together as a moderator and probably throw in some questions. While waiting for some questions from the floor or from the participants here, I'd like to go back to the opening remarks by our chairman, Chito. And as he described why we are putting up this webinar is because of the fact that the Asian region or the Southeast Asian region, we are the ones who probably the polluter of these plastics, like 1/3 of the total pollution. That is a fact. So what the Southeast Asian region, represented by Ms. Jaslyn Lee, has fully described what these other countries are doing. It's very relevant, and followed by the presentation of Commissioner Crispian Lau, because this is the initiative also of the government, and of course on the side of our secretary and by Mr. Paringit here, Dr. Paringit. And I like to put some things together here. I'm a banker by profession. I am not an expert in environment. I'm also in the computer field, doing banking software. But I like to put in my few words down for the benefit of the speakers and also some of the participants. I think the overall direction of the whole world right now is that we want to save the planet Earth, and talk about planet Earth. That is on the top. And then I want to put this into an algorithm. What you resource persons describe. Okay, so this is my own take. So I focus on the first algorithm, which is the definition of the problems at hand. These were all identified by our resource persons. All the things that they mentioned, what's happening in the particular countries, and then identified the EPRs. Okay, what these countries are doing. And I like that. I appreciate from the expert advice from Ms. Jocelyn what the WWF is doing is very important. I will have questions for Ms. Jocelyn in a while. Then I move to the next algorithm. What were the solutions offered? The initiatives coming from the regional and also from the Philippines. And there are so many things described by Commissioner. And of course, down the line, you talk about the element of introducing the technologies. To me, I listened to this part of the presentation of Paringet because it looks like, if we have a burden of so many problems on hand, and what are the doable solutions? Okay, so that is really what I wanted. Now, I like to translate this more, as I said, we are CFOs, and I like to take, my take here is, what are the business opportunities arising from this? So this is what was shared by Dr. Paringet. And I like to, probably as Phoenix member and as a finance person, I'm a banker, and if I had to finance all of this, what would it take me to do these things? So I'm putting these things as part of my own algorithm, and then probably at the end, if it's a business opportunity, why not? We can solve the problem and save the planet. So let me move forward, and thank you for for listening to my little bit of my my summary here. Miss Jocelyn, are you there? There's a question coming from one of our members here in terms of the EPRs. From each identified, you presented the initiatives or the efforts by each country. We'd like to draw more in terms of from the time that they started on the EPR, because all these countries have already recognized the member countries of Southeast Asia. We're talking about the stages we're in. Okay, the target dates, etc. I was hoping more to see more that, for example, Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore, all these countries. Where are they, and what are the target dates for them? Because I don't know exactly how much tons they consume, they produce from this country. In other words, if you have to solve a problem, this is the problem in these countries. And what are they doing? The target dates, government efforts, and probably the non-government effort. That's what you have identified. And number two, maybe you can, I just want to put this together, is that assuming that you know all of this, and I like that portion where you presented that there is a coordination between the government initiative and also the finance world. And there are efforts by the finance. In other words, if I have to put in my money into this program by these NGOs or probably the government, what are the incentives for the banks? I've yet to see this even in the Philippines. What are the incentives? Are there tax credits for like the green bonds? Okay, when we issue that, are these incentives? Now, probably I put a little bit focus on this one because that's my line. And maybe Jocelyn, can you inspire us with those two things to answer?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Franklin. I'll just proceed to answer to the first question first in terms of what are the progress in each of the countries in Southeast Asia. I would just like to highlight that I think for the case of Vietnam, I think mainly because they are moving so much more ahead is mainly because of the leadership from the government who is really driving the EPR implementation, and of course in formulating, revising regulations in Vietnam. So actually the government is already looking into developing the EPR implementation decree right now. And they're looking to implementing EPR by early next year. Yeah. So they are very ambitious. I would say the government is really driving the initiative. So I think one of the advantage of having a government to really drive the initiative is that they'll be able to provide a clear guideline, especially for SMEs, small to medium enterprises, which we have a big portion of them in Southeast Asia countries, including not only in Vietnam, we also have a very big portion of SMEs in Malaysia and Thailand and Indonesia as well. So, so that is what's happening in Vietnam right now. So for the case of Malaysia, I would say we do have an advantage where the civil societies are working very closely with the private sector. And there is already a multi-stakeholder platform called Malaysia Sustainable Plastic Alliance that was formed together with the Ministry of Environment and Water. So the multi-stakeholder platform has been giving us a lot of opportunities to also reach out to SMEs, which are mainly represented by the Plastic Manufacturing Society Association and Plastic Recycling Association as well, because part of the SMEs, especially those converters and plastic manufacturers and recyclers, they're actually part of the small to medium enterprises. And of course, when it comes to transitioning to the circular economy, it is very challenging for them because they only have very limited resources available and very limited funding available as well. So that is when the civil societies together with the private sectors are working together to put pressure to the government to really look into developing a roadmap. So there is already a roadmap that is currently being tabled in the cabinet. It is called the Roadmap for Circular Economy for Plastics. So there are several targets that have been developed by the ministry. So before the implementation of a mandatory EPR system will be implemented in 2025, there are several initiatives that has to be done within the first few years, including providing alternative financing to SMEs. So that's one of the options they are looking at. And of course, at the same time, now I'm slowly answering the second question as well, where the government is also working with the financial institutions. So the examples that I have given and shared with everyone is actually a very recent initiative by a group of Islamic banking in Malaysia. So they come together to develop a sectoral guide for their clients and businesses, especially those who are from three key sectors that they have identified. The first one is the plastic sector. The second one is iron and steel. And the third key sector is electrical and electronic appliances sector. So the guidance have been developed to provide a list of reference for financial institutions and investors who really assess the risks that they will have to look into for each of the businesses or portfolio that they are investing in. So plastic has been included. So I think that is just the first step. But we are not, I think this is really just the beginning of the initiative. But of course, if you look at other Western countries, they're already so much more ahead, where some of the financial institutions, they already have a commitment and a target as well. For example, to divert how much plastic waste from landfill, from the environment. And they are already looking at how to influence their clients by providing a series of guidance. And I would say those are the recent initiatives from both the government and from financial institutions as well. And for the case of Singapore, of course, the government is always leading the initiative. I think that is a very good news because that is how they create change on the ground. So the businesses will have to follow suit. Once the government set a very clear roadmap by when they will have to do this, then the government will have to follow as well. For Indonesia, unfortunately, I don't see a lot of development in the space of EPR yet, although there is already a policy on EPR implementation in the country. So moving forward, we are hoping that there will be more conversation on that in terms of what is the roadmap and timelines in terms of a full implementation in the country.
Thank you, Ms. Jocelyn. But before you go, I'll let you go. There's one thing that I'd like to ask, that in the effort, especially the Southeast Asia, is there an effort by all these countries to come together like a multilateral organization wherein all ideas They all sit down, all these experts like you guys, you sit down and put this in a matrix for us to understand what you guys are doing and let us know exactly what directions and how we can all respond to that. I'd like to see that kind of forum probably addresses to Mr. Commissioner Crispian and maybe, I don't know if you have attended forum, but I'd like to see, I'd like probably to invite to be part of it and probably see how these sectors are. But anyway, you don't have to answer that. Okay, I can move on. I have limited time here.
Yes.
So thank you very much, Ms. Jocelyn, for your time and also your effort in enlightening us here. Can I move now to Commissioner? Commissioner, good morning also, and thank you for your presentation. It's quite so fast that you were talking about. I've not heard of this National Solid Waste. It's only now that I've met you. And you're under the office of the president or the DNR. Well, what you described earlier was really a little very, 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 what do you call this, conclusive, and all the efforts of the government are all written down there. But the thing is that when I went through all of these things that you mentioned, where is the action? I mean, when I talk about the action, it's like we in the business sector, okay, what are you gonna do? We have beautiful plans, etc. The execution, the implementation. There's so many things here that I'd like to see. Hopefully, if you can move on, but not necessarily here, but in the relationship, for example, you mentioned about the private sector, but what about on the local governments down the line and what their efforts are? In other words, are there also like punitive measures for people who, because nobody, they just throw away their waste, diba? I mean, nobody cares. But in other countries, if you throw something, a piece of paper, then they will really. I think Singapore does it. No, they will fine you or something like that. Do we have such here, Commissioner, in the Philippines?
Yeah, thank you for that very difficult question to answer.
Sorry.
Wearing the government hat, it's really a challenge. No, why? Because even within the commission, there are multiple agencies within the commission. What is important is to get everybody on an understanding of the problem and how to approach it holistically at the national level as a government agency. At least now that there is what we call the National Plan of Action on Marine Litter. In fact, when you look at Manila Bay, you look at all the other programs, you'd see that somehow it's fragmented. Even industry is very fragmented in their actions. So finally, we now have a national plan of action to address marine litter. In fact, I'm in another meeting because they are formally organizing the technical working group that would put this into real action. Now, if you look at the local government unit, the knee-jerk reaction really was just to simply ban all of the plastic materials. There's banning left and right. The challenge really with the ban is what are the viable alternatives? From an investments point of view, me being a businessman myself, I don't like seeing the materials being banned, which are locally manufactured, to be replaced by imported materials that will be only used one time. The only thing is that it's not plastics, but it's still single use and disposed of in an infrastructure that is lacking. So for us, I think with the framework of first the sustainable consumption and production, and then the national plan of action that is spearheaded by DENR right now. And by the way, it is actually the Biodiversity Management Bureau on top of this. Then at least locally, we can have focus. I do attend a lot of international forums. The problem
Okay.
are we sending the right people to the international fora? Right?
So we have that.
We have that, we participate in that, but unfortunately, I am not a participant all the time. I meet in some of the different events, but this is a separate invite from either the organizers. So again, it's the structure of government, that again, me being private sector, so of course, more often than not, it's DENR that is represented in those forums or DFA. So whether that transcends to us, it's rare, But I think it is important for private sector to take that initiative to start the ball rolling. I've been in the commission for some time. We wanted to do it top down, government doing it, no?
Yeah.
But then it was so difficult, so opted to look at it bottom up using private sector, and really the private sector can be a very big driving force, especially in filling the gaps of infrastructure. And at the end of the day, it is us from private sector who put those materials there, and it is us who really needs to address the problem. Of course, with the help of the OST in continually finding viable alternatives for us.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. I really appreciate what you're. Well, at least if you can participate in this fora, international fora, that would really be a effort from the regional, as what Ms. Jocelyn will be doing. It will be helping the WWF. We'll appreciate that, and thank you. And I have, because of the limited time, I have to move on to Dr. Paringit, because to me this is a little bit more encouraging to me, because as a businessman and a banker myself. Okay, so I look at what the two presentations, and Dr. Paring really amplified everything that what we really want to happen in this country. Okay, so from the point of view of business, or even as a banker, because I've been approached by many proposals from borrowers, etc. If I look into this opportunity, Doctor, there's so many technologies that you described there. Now, if I were to ask you to put this in a matrix, or probably what we call this in a perspective wherein, okay, for small, let's say some biodegradable, etc., and then this is what we have developed. You probably not only developed, but you have really put these things together, and mechanical, etc., whatever it takes. And how much would it cost to buy, or probably to manufacture this system that processes this plastic use, and for sale to in other industries? In other words, it can be they can be doing something for the other industry. Now, from my point of view as a banker, if I'm saying, okay, he says, oh, I have a project here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some recycling, I'm going to do all of this. What is the cost of that in terms of, in other words, if this is the alternative? Because we as banker, we will try to analyze whether, why don't you just use the plastic? It's cheaper. And if I put money in your machine, it probably becomes obsolete. That is something that has to be justified before the finance people come in, and to make your business viable. Has the DORC been able to put that into another perspective? Because it's so nice to listen to your technologies, development, etc. I love what you guys are doing. I have friends engineers from UP who sabi nga nila sa DOST, puro mga taga-UP na rin. Totoo ba yun? I don't know. There are engineers who know you. But really, as a banker, are this really viable? Can we really finance this and make money? Not money from the bank, but for the business people. That's all. That's my question.
Yeah, Frank, you've hit it the right spot there, because I think a big chunk of the discussions that we are now reeling into when it comes to single-use plastics is the economic viability of it all. But if you can translate some of the also the costs attributed to the damage to the environment, it can be offset. No, the cost of it will offset. Actually, the argument has always been that plastics are the cheapest way to package products. Plastics are the best way to actually contain some of the food and the ingredients and materials that we have. If we come to a point where we start to realize that it is no longer true, then I think we would have a very good niche now for the alternatives that we have. So I have here, of course, Director Annabel Briones, who may be able to talk more about the shop side of things, how much this technology costs. But I'd like to say that in all of these technologies that we have spun off in the past few years, if I look at the accounts that we have, we spent something like 574 million in a span of 11 years already. I think more if we include individual.
Are these inventions available now? Are these inventions
yes, in fact, some of them are spun off as startups. Some of them are spinning out of universities. And of course, ITDI, which Dr. Bionis is heading, is also offering this as licensing for some of the companies who may be interested. No? So right after this, or maybe during this discussion, you can touch
I-
base with
I like
yeah, that's true. But this I'd like to say, we've been really trying to develop our skills also in trying to talk shop, no, and trying to, as you said, how much. It's always the common question: how much the WTE cost? How much does the bioreactor cost? And because we implemented it at a prototype level, at a experimental level, maybe the costs are different. But when we price it according to maybe that's one thing. Once that's suitable for market, it might be a little bit more different. And number two is that we don't really sell these things. No, we usually
you
transfer
don't.
technology to some industries or firms that will be able to take it on and produce it at scale. So actually, the call for us now is to be able to connect as fast and as many as we could to those interested groups who may be able to are already into those, are already producing plastics, but are trying to find alternatives, no. So maybe as a final maybe just to put this all in some perspective, I'd like to draw the analogy to, say, for example, renewable energy projects that we now have under the with the spate of the surging fuel prices that we now have. We're now seeing what we're seeing now is that suddenly there's a sort of a parity that we can see between the prices rather the cost of energy production coming off from renewables when you compare it to the fossil based fuel prices, right? So probably if we come to that point also where we could actually produce more of these alternatives at a better economic more economically more competitive scale than what's available, I think we would be able to already make a breakthrough. And you mentioned earlier, what are the incentives, no? Please take
Oh, yeah.
note that whatever research and development products that are coming out of our researchers, they can whoever adopts them can actually apply for some incentives according to our investment laws. So that's also an opportunity. Yeah. So we have a standing agreement with the board of investments on this, and the mechanisms are quite clear already. I think there are about 10, a little bit 10 or more companies have already availed of this kind of investment incentives, I would say. Director Annabelle, would you like to add a little bit about this discussion?
What I was thinking, Doctor, was this: if I have to approve a loan for somebody who wants to go into this business, especially on this, not only the renewal, it's another topic which Chito would probably say in the next topic. Probably I would need the FDA or the Crispy and Laos mark on the proposal that okay, this is a viable one. The cost benefit are all there. Maybe it's something that we will appreciate. That okay, if it works, then probably we'll give you the money.
Yeah, I
Because
think
it's more than
there's actually a mechanism for that. DOST has been assigned by DNR to actually provide environment technology verification process and certification. I think Director Annabelle, would you like to add to
okay.
that? So we stamp we have a stamp of not really approval, but it's just saying that whatever technology is claiming to do, we will be able to test it. We will be able to verify how it performs, how it produces,
Yeah, thanks.
so that our government agencies could be guided in putting out approvals for various permits or processes.
Well, with that, I'd like to thank our resource person. Ms. Jasmine, maybe you can follow up on that international fora where everybody, including Phoenix, can be on board. And we would like to listen to what the other Southeast Asian countries are doing, where we are, what we're going to do next. Because sometimes, somehow, when we share these ideas, you arrive at a solution that is viable, maybe the cost-effective solution. And that's what we're after in this forum. With that, I'd like to thank all of you, and I'd like to turn the floor to Beth or Chito. Other if we have time. I don't think we have enough time
Um,
for the next presenters.
in the
Beth?
in the interest of time, there are a lot of interesting questions in the Q&A box. We'd like to ask the speakers to kindly address them directly in the Q&A box, so we can move to
Okay.
the second half of the forum.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Beth.
Thank you, Frank. We're now on the second half of the forum, where we will hear from the private sector. Our next speaker is Ms. Arlene Tan Bantoto. She is the current SVP and Head of Corporate Affairs and Communication of Nestle Philippines. She spearheads public affairs, including government and industry relations, corporate communications, and she leads the sustainability and creating shared value initiatives of Nestle Philippines. Her extensive experience includes various expat stints in the region, as well as in the Nestle headquarters in Switzerland, as she took on roles in sales and brand management. She holds a BS degree in business economics from the University of the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Arlene Tan Bantoto.
Thank you, Beth, for that introduction. Okay, can you see my slide and can you hear me clearly?
Yes, you're clear. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for that introduction. Good morning, mga kasambuhay for the environment. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting us today and also commend all of you for putting together this series that will allow us to think harder about what we can do together to solve the plastic waste challenge we face in the country today. Before I begin, allow me to introduce Nestle. We have been in the country for 110 years, so this year is our 110th birthday. And we produce and sell these brands that you see on screen. But more than that, through our brands, we aim to enable healthier and happier lives and be a force for good for society. Our purpose is to unlock the power of food to enhance the quality of life for everyone today and for generations to come. We have three key impact areas. So first, we support individuals and their families with tastier and healthier food choice and aim to inspire people to lead healthier lives. We are also committed to building resilient communities by improving the livelihoods of farmers, specifically the coffee farmers since 1962, and rural communities where we procure our raw materials. Finally, for the planet, we aim to shape sustainable consumption and steward resources for future generations. So thank you for inviting me here today to talk about an urgent issue that we all need to tackle immediately. If we put things into perspective, the Earth has been around for about 5 billion years now, and plastics were only commercialized just over 100 years ago. If we condense the Earth's lifespan into 24 hours, that 5 billion into 24 hours, that means plastics have been around for only 2.4 milliseconds. But imagine the impact of what that 2.4 milliseconds has had on the planet. We have seen firsthand the growing problem of plastic waste. We have reached a point where the Philippines has become the third top polluter of plastics in the ocean. The topic today is about single-use plastic, but as you all know, this is part of a larger issue, which is climate change. Nestle signed the UN Global Compact Business Ambition for 1.5 degrees Celsius pledge. This supports the Paris Agreement. In the Philippines, we have been the first in the country to declare our net zero goal before or by 2050. And on the right, you will see, not very clearly, a clear roadmap with milestones, plastic of which plays a big role. So because we are the largest multinational food and beverage company in the Philippines, we will not continue to be business as usual. Earlier, we had a very interesting panel discussion on cost versus investment. But today, this is not a nice to have anymore. It's not an option. So we must all start with the vision. And for us, our vision in Nestle is that none of our packaging, including plastics, will end up in landfill or as litter. Our ambition is that by 2025, 100% of our packaging will be recyclable or reusable. Additionally, we aim to reduce our use of virgin plastic consumption by 1/3, also by 2025. And I will tell you now, it's not easy. So we have several key focus areas because we plan to do this in 5 ways. The first 3 on your left are related to packaging innovations. We are reducing packaging, looking at other delivery systems, but not so easy like refillable, the second picture on your left. Because as you know, we deliver food and we have to make sure that the integrity and the quality of the product reaches the consumer as we hope it to be. So we are reducing packaging, looking at other delivery systems we could use, and also pioneering new materials. We are also looking into ways in which we can create increased collection, sorting and recycling, and lastly, educate our consumers to practice the 3 Rs and proper solid waste management. In 2020, we were able to eliminate 1,100 metric tons of plastic, which is equivalent to thereabout the weights of 147 elephants. Some activities we did to achieve this was first to look at our supply chain and begin to remove stretch film from our operations. We have also removed secondary plastic bags and have shifted to paper bags. We are also exploring alternative delivery systems, as I mentioned earlier. This year, we have conducted research on refilling stations, and the intention of running this program is to learn from it and see how we can improve and expand the system for future use. It's not very easy because, for example, our Milo and our Nescafe, nanigas siya, no? In only a few days. That was 2 years ago when we did our trial. So now we're doing another round. So it's really a test and learn system. This model will allow consumers to bring their containers to the store for refilling. On reducing plastic, another route we took is to reduce plastic, is to look for alternative plastic materials to this. In 2020, we became the first company in the Philippines to shift our locally produced ready-to-drink products to paper straws. We will continue to look for innovations to further reduce our plastic consumption and redesign our packaging to be more recyclable. We have research centers across the globe working day and night. And we have a packaging institute in Switzerland dedicated to finding innovative packaging solutions. So today we are here as finance and business executives, but we also need to remember we are first and foremost consumers. And as consumers, we need to ask ourselves, how can I be a kasambuhay for the environment when it comes to packaging? First, we can be aware of how much we consume. So I just want to see a quick show of hands. Type, or can you just type yes in the chat box if you know how much plastics you consume, and type no if you don't. Because you will be surprised. Many people actually don't know how much plastic they consume. So congratulations to me, she said yes. Okay, Edgar says no. Okay, so thank you for engaging. The first step is really to be aware of our behavior. We can start by recording our packaging use and find ways where we can cut back. We can reduce and reuse. We should shift our mindset away from a throwaway culture. We should think before we buy items and ask ourselves if it's something we really need. We should use reusable bags and avoid products that are overpackaged. We should buy in bulk or trade up, and when possible, upsize. Upsizing reduces our plastic consumption. So this is a nice guide I recently found right after the online 11/11 sale. So I don't know who among you bought from Lazada and Shopee yesterday. So it's called the buyer key of needs. Use what we have, borrow, swap, thrift, or make before we buy. Now let me go to neutrality. Aside from packaging innovations, we are also working hard to remove plastic from the environment. In 2020, we were the first multinational FMCG that achieved plastic neutrality. We collected a little over the amount of plastics we put out in the market. We collected and processed and co-processed over 27,000 metric tons or 27 million kilos which is about 2,700 dump trucks worth of plastic waste, and have partnered with 4 different stakeholders to achieve this. Aside from making sure the equivalent amount of waste we put out doesn't reach nature, we're also investing in infrastructures like boats, along with Pure Oceans, who is one of our speakers today, and motorcycles to increase efficiency of the country's waste stream. In partnership with PCX, on your left-hand side, we have set up container vans and balers to facilitate collection in communities and in all SM malls. So this is something you can do: collect your plastic waste, clean them, and bring them to SM malls when you go shopping. We also support infrastructure and encourage sorting, and recently formed a partnership with DNR to build MRF facilities, one of which is in Caloocan. So as we support recycling infrastructure through our brand, Bear Brand, we collect sachets in Mercury drugstores and process these sachets into chairs. And through our ready-to-drink line, we collect beverage cartons from condominiums in the metro and recycle these into various paper and plastic products. We found that when we talk about our initiatives in public to our consumers, we would get a lot of inquiries. So in fact, a lot of consumers now want to be more earth-friendly. And they ask, how can we help? Where do we drop off our waste? How could they be neutral too, was the questions people were asking. So we decided to work together with our consumers to crowdsource plastic collection points across the country. And with the help of Rappler, we were able to develop a map that you see on your screen now, where you and I can search the nearest plastic collection points nearest to you. Feel free to go to the link on the screen to access this map so you too can recycle your plastic waste. So there are ways we can, as consumers, support and collection and recycling. So I'd like to see again a show of hands. Please type yes if you feel you know how to properly segregate your waste. Type no if you feel you still need more information. Okay, ang galing ng group na to ah. A lot of people are saying yes. Actually, everybody said yes. So congratulations. Because as consumers, we need to segregate our waste. And I will tell you now, I've attended a lot of talks, and when I ask this question, 99% of the time people type no. So can you imagine, you are really a special group. So we can give our recyclables to our garbage collector who can sell these items, or you can go to the link I shared in my last slide, and I'll type it later in the link in the chat box to find collection points near you. As a principle, always separate wet and dry waste. Mixing both makes recyclables dirty and wet, which will not be accepted by recyclers. So let's test our knowledge on segregation kasi marami nagsabi they know how to segregate. Where should we throw a used pizza box? Type A for recyclable, B for residual, C for biodegradable, and D for special waste. So very quickly. So iba-iba yung sagot, no? All right. So based on the results of your answers, it is clear that education is key to ensuring we all practice proper solid waste management. So guys, the answer is residual kasi may oil na. You cannot, it's not biodegradable anymore and it's not recyclable anymore. So every time you consume pizza, it is what it is. Akala mo na sa box and okay, you can recycle it, but no, you can't anymore. So as Nestle, we would like to empower our consumers to live more sustainable lifestyles. So we develop modules with the help of our dear Christian here, my partner, one of your speakers today. And these modules have been endorsed by the National Solid Waste Management Commission that is taught in schools through our wellness program with DepEd. We reach around 11 million students nationwide. So we also develop condensed versions of modules and workbooks for teens and parents, which you can access via this QR code. So how can you as a consumer be a kasambuhay for the environment? Learn more about solid waste, the 3 R's, how to segregate your waste properly, educate yourself, but don't stop there. It is also important to spread the word. Lastly, in Nestle, sustainability starts at home. We have collection sites in our office. So earlier, the moderator was asking how can you start? You can have collection sites in your office. You can encourage your employees to bring their clean plastic waste to SM malls. You can encourage your employees to segregate, right? And all our sites are single-use plastic free. So bawal na yung mga paper cups. We all have our mugs and we have to use it. Even cubiertos, we have to use our own spoon and fork. We make sure as well that all our factories are zero waste to landfill. And we have a dedicated team focusing on shaping a waste-free future. Our employees have joined a program called Isa Buhay sa Bahay program, where they commit to live out Nestle's sustainability commitments at home as well. On the right, you will find a photo of one of our employees collecting plastics from her home as well as her neighbor's home. Yan ang Isa Buhay sa Bahay at Kapitbahay. As consumers, sustainability starts at home. It is our responsibility to be an example for our family and friends. There is definitely a lot more work to be done. But as Nestle, we are committed to finding solutions and speed up our journey to be a kasambuhay for the environment. We have been actively working with government legislative and executive branch on an EPR scheme that we support, as well as the academe. And recently, we tied up with Climate Change Commission to have a climate hackathon to enjoin the youth to give new ideas to solve our environmental issues. So we look forward to working hand in hand with you to make a waste-free future a reality. Thank you so much for this time, and I wish you all an inspired day.
Thank you, Arlene. It's good to hear how big corporations like Nestle are moving towards a circular economy and helping the general population migrate as well. I'll start looking for your nearest plastic collection points. And we now move to the next speaker. Our next speaker is Mr. Romel Benig. He is the president and CEO of Green Ants Builders. It's an innovative company which manufactures green construction materials and sets up eco hubs across the country. He is a board certified mechanical engineer, top 3 in the ME licensure exam, if I may add, from the University of the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Romel Benig.
Thank you for the kind introduction, Ms. Beth. Yeah, please allow me to share my slide. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you. First, thank you very much, Phoenix, for inviting us here. This is really a great opportunity to share with everyone what we do as a company. So in this slide here, you can see our inspiration. This little creature here, this is actually a green ant. Locally, we call green ants hunting. So in the succeeding slides, I will be sharing with you how we have put into action the circular economy model in sustainable construction. So we are familiar with this. The Philippines is the 3rd biggest plastic polluter in the world, next to China and Indonesia. And this is not something we Filipinos can all be proud of. We really have to do something to address this. And I'm speaking in front of you now, not just to present to you our products, our company, but really this is a call to action that we have to collaborate and do something. According to the World Economic Forum and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, by year 2050, if we don't do anything, there will be more plastics in the ocean than fish. So this is really very alarming. Thus, we really have to do something, and we need to act now. So here's a closer look at plastics. Yes, it's a big problem now, plastic pollution, but really the trouble is, plastic is very useful. So we are using plastics in packaging, building and construction, textiles, and consumer products, and a lot more. So yes, we have this big waste problem, but plastic is an amazing material. So we need to look things differently. So what can we do? First is we need to have a change in mindset. And this change in mindset is captured by this quotation from Albert Einstein, which is one of my favorites, that we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. So we need to always challenge the status quo. We need to believe that there's always a better way of doing things. And this is the kind of mindset that we need to embrace as we transition from the linear economy model to the circular economy model. So just a brief backgrounder, the linear economy model, we are very much familiar with this. We are taking resources from the environment, make products, consume these products, and dispose of the waste. Consume, dispose, then wastes accumulate in the environment. So we know very well that this is not a sustainable model. Wastes continue to accumulate in the landfills. So landfills are not sustainable. And in fact, landfills are closing. So we need a different model. And what we are proposing is the circular economy model. So we started embracing this in year 2013 as we jump-started Green Ants. So here we can see that we are closing the loop. We make products, we use and consume them, and then we return the waste to the value chain. So the key principle here really is to treat waste as a resource. If we do this, we will view waste differently. And it is very much possible. And we'll be sharing with you how we're able to do that in the green construction industry. So with the circular economy model, the objective really is to close the loop. We want to eliminate the concept of waste. So from production and purchasing to consumption, to collection and processing, we treat waste as a resource. We design for reusability and recyclability. And of course, first and foremost, we want to refuse the use of single-use packaging as much as possible. So what is Green Ants? Green Ants has evolved from being a brick maker in 2013 to becoming a product, technology, and solutions development company where we use waste as a resource. By the way, Nestle helped us in jump-starting the company in 2014. And Nestle is still a partner now. Thank you for the support, Nestle. We are also working with companies to help them divert their waste away from the landfills. And Green Ants, since 2013, has created a whole ecosystem, pioneering and institutionalizing the circular economy model in the Philippines. In this single slide here, we can see the circularity in what we do as a company. From the different types of waste and the different sources, we are bringing the waste to a Green Ants facility, which we call an eco-hub. So we are processing clean and dry plastics, fly ash, construction and demolition debris, and other types of difficult to recycle items. So we are working with companies like Colgate-Palmolive. So Colgate-Palmolive is helping us in scaling up our plastic collection program. So using this the waste, we are converting them into useful green building materials like the eco bricks, the eco cast, the eco pavers, and then we supply them back to the requirements of the construction industry. So you can see here some of the sample installations. And at the end of life of the structure, the demolition debris will then be brought back to the Green Ants facility, and the cycle continues. So this is the circular economy model as applied to construction. And we are doing this in collaboration with companies, local government units, and communities. So the community really plays a big role in terms of plastic collection. So we are setting up plastic drop-off points in different locations like the malls, Ayala malls. So we just formalized an agreement to scale up the drop-off points in all Ayala malls across the country. in partnership also with Colgate-Palmolive. So with Ayala Land, we have created a circular waste system. So we are collecting the clean and dry plastics in Ayala malls and properties, and we bring them to a Green Ants facility, which we call an Eco Hub. So we have an Eco Hub in Arca South, Taguig City, sponsored by Ayala Land. Here, we produce the eco products, which we supply to the requirements, the construction requirements of Ayala. So this initiative with Green Ants was recognized through Ayala Land in the 2021 Stevie Awards. So what is an Eco Hub? Basically, an Eco Hub is a 3-in-1 facility. So it is a plastic waste collection point, a recycling facility, and a manufacturing plant for green building materials. So in effect, it is a modern materials recovery facility. We recognize that there's a need to really set up this kind of infrastructure across the country. The level of implementation is relatively low for MRFs. It is around 30 to 35% as of 2021. So really, we still have a lot of things to do. We need this kind of infrastructure for us to have an effective and efficient waste management system in the country. And we are working with companies, local government units, to continuously build this kind of infrastructure. This is also a socially inclusive model where we engage the community and other sectors like the waste pickers. Yes, we are disrupting and innovating, but the model is very socially inclusive. So I just want to share with you the number of eco hubs that we have built since 2015. So we have over 30 eco hubs. Long way to go. We really have to collaborate with everyone, the local government units and private corporations, investors, to really scale this up. So we envision to have Green Ants eco hubs and plastic stations, drop-off points across the country in all cities and municipalities. So what do we do with the plastics? We convert them into green building materials. Our flagship product is the Eco Brick. So we have the Eco Cast, which is a bigger brick. And we also have Eco Paver. So this Eco Paver, we designed it to be porous, so rainwater can seep through. This will minimize flooding. Some sample projects that we have done, Filipina Shell is also supporting us. Here in this picture, this is the first Shell commercial building made of 100% Eco Brick. Okay, so and also the first 2 Green McDonald's store used our products. So these are tangible examples that really circular economy model is working. It's really feasible, and it makes practical business sense. Some more examples in the middle. That's the 4-story building of Max's group of restaurant, commissary building. We have also built several affordable but dignified houses. Here you can see some of the units that we have built. This contains around 300 to 500 to 600 kilograms of plastic. And we are using plastics, by the way, to substitute some of the sand and gravel that we quarry from the environment. So aside from addressing plastic pollution, that's another environmental impact of this initiative. So we are replacing some of the sand and gravel. So this particular house utilized around 800 kilos of plastic. And this plastic also help us in having a product which is insulated, thermally insulated. So another product that we have developed, this one is what we call Greenite. This is a substitute for synthetic granite. So this contains around 30% plastic. We are also working with other partners like Ayala and Fort Bonifacio, Redicon, and Shell to develop and scale up this plastic road concept. So this one is the pilot that we did in Bonifacio Global City. So one key finding that we had here is that the road is stronger by at least 29%. So in terms of martial stability, or this is the ability of the road to say to reduce the potholes, etc. So we just want to share with you the sample case study showing the circular economy model in green construction. So we have a partner based in Davao, Mati City. So their subdivision use Green Ants Eco products in mass housing. So this is the subdivision. And these are some of the buildings that they have there. They are the first developer to use Green Ants products in mass housing. They were able to get the green light from Pag-ibig. So Pag-ibig has approved the use of Green Ants Eco product in mass housing in this particular subdivision. So this is really a big milestone for us because eventually this can be replicated and scaled up across the country. Okay, so and because of that support from Pag-ibig, they were able to reduce the down payment from 20% to 10%. So here's what we did in that particular case study. We set up a Green Ants Eco Hub near the facility, and we supplied them with the eco product. And then once the subdivision is complete, Green Ants will be supporting them in terms of waste management. So really, this is a circular economy in action. So these are some of the companies, organizations, and local government units who are helping us as we blaze the trail. Just want to share with you this. In 2019, we represented the Philippines in the Asia Pacific Housing Forum, and we won first place in the construction innovation category. And just recently, last October 12, 2021, we were recognized by the 12th Asia CEO Awards as one of the most innovative companies in the Philippines. So this is really a validation of our passion for innovation. So thank you very much, and looking forward to collaborating with you all. Let's clean up the world. Let's clean up the Philippines. And as we always say it in Green Ants, one community at a time, one brick at a time. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Romel. Very impressive. Apart from being able to bring back plastic into the economy, you're even generating a lot of jobs. So we need more of these initiatives. We now move on to our last, but certainly not the least, speaker. She's Ms. Pia Ocampo. She's the founder and CEO of Pure Oceans. It's a marine conservation social enterprise working with coastal and island communities to keep reefs plastic free. And she's also founder and CEO of Remaker Space. It's a prototyping facility for plastic upcycling and circular design. She's been helping communities develop their own locally sustainable waste management systems and plastic waste diverting livelihood enterprises. It's an approach that has gained the support for Pure Oceans from the WWF Philippines, the USAID's Clean Cities Blue Oceans program, and the UNDP Ending Plastic Pollution Innovation Challenge. She was a British Council Scholar in the 10th International Innovative and Creative Entrepreneurs Program and holds a BA degree in psychology from the University of the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Pia Ocampo.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm hoping you're able to see my slide in full. Is it okay? Okay. If there are any issues, kindly just let me know on chat. So good morning, financial experts of the Philippines. Thank you for joining us this morning. And I have to give a disclaimer. I'm unused to this outfit. I'm usually nakachinelas when I'm out there doing my work. And I guess it's fitting because I'm here today. You've heard very kind of top line indications of the circular economy in the Philippines, thanks to our industry leaders. Very interesting presentations. What I'd like to show you is what that looks like on ground for individuals and NGOs. And in a way, you'll see how, like on ground, what the circular economy looks like for us. So I will just move on. So a bit of background on me, of course. Mentioned that I am the founder of Pure Oceans. We're a marine social enterprise, and we would really like to tackle other things like very specific to reef conservation, livelihood conservation for coastal communities. But right now, the urgent mission that we're seeing really has to do with plastic-free reefs and seas, since those are direct threats to the community's livelihood and resilience. Thanks to all the previous speakers, actually, I can at least skip my slides on how the Philippines is basically one of the biggest contributors of marine plastic litter in the world, right? And we've all heard of that. So I'd like to go straight into how Pure Oceans and other organizations are trying to address that. So specifically for Pure Oceans, our intent is really to divert plastic waste from the oceans into a more robust Philippine circular economy. So there are two things here. There's the diversion of plastic waste from the oceans. The way Pure Oceans operates, we basically just assume that the final endpoint of our current plastic waste now are rivers, waterways, the oceans, and the reefs. Because the reality is our waste management systems are not robust enough, not just for waste generated by the communities, but also waste that somehow it could be global waste or municipal waste that goes to other communities and that we end up catch basins for. And the second thing in the statement is, of course, the idea of a more robust Philippine circular economy. And I'll share from my experience, like what does that look like for someone working with communities, someone whose work is very on ground. So I'll give you a sense of, how things work now. Well, so I was supposed to discuss individual action. So I'll start with my individual action and how it started for me. Pure Oceans really started because I'm a scuba diver. And if anyone here is a fellow scuba diver, as I know some in the organizing committee and in Phoenix are, is a scuba diver, a snorkeler, or a beach lover, please just put in the chat like your favorite sites to visit. No, I'd like you to go back to the ocean that you remember and the marine life that you got to see when you're out there. So we're so lucky that we are in a biodiversity hotspot for marine life. We are, basically top in the world for number of Philippine marine life, both in coral and fish. So I feel lucky to be a scuba diver. So I was diving since 2006, and over time we started to notice more and more that, when we look into the reefs, we look into the coral, we started seeing plastics as well, rather than actual marine life. This was in 2011 that we started really taking note that basically every dive we do, we'd start seeing plastics already, like it was a given. So we'd often see these single-use plastics. So they're multi-layer plastic sachets, or simple, this would be PET or PP plastics. So we did our own, I call it, we would see single-use plastics in the water, so we did our single-use solutions. So you may have heard of the term scuba sorero. So we'd bring down a little mesh bag and pull out plastic whenever we could. That was our little contribution. But of course, once we'd gone up and put the plastics that we gathered, usually these are diapers. Once we've unraveled them from the coral, once we're up back in the resort, the question is, okay, what happens to this plastic now? So of course, we needed a more systemic solution. So with it started 2011, I didn't really get to start Pure Oceans until 2018. And for me, basically, the first challenge to get a more systemic solution in was to find a technology partner. So in 2018, I found Envirotech. They're well known. I'm sure you've heard of them. They've been making school chairs. And the reason for partnering with Envirotech was because, if you see in the picture, the kind of plastic waste and the volume of plastic waste that they could take in and use as input material was matching with the kinds of plastic that we were collecting from coastals. So we needed a partner who could take in basically a lot of sachets, a lot of these plastics that are traditionally non-recyclable, especially in the Philippines. So that was in 2018. So since then, this isn't much, especially compared to the volume of plastic waste we have. We've diverted more than 35,000 kilos of plastic from our communities that bound the Verde Island Passage. Of course, most of this, as I said, are on plastic residuals. We focus our work. We used to work in Manila as well, right, with urban poor communities, but we started focusing our work on below poverty line coastal and island communities. We're basically very underserved in terms of waste management. And the thing with our communities is they don't have the waste management systems to deal with the plastic waste they generate, which isn't much. But actually, majority of the plastic waste they have to deal with are the ones that end up on their shores, in their waters, and in their reefs. So for me, there's also like a human dignity issue here, right? Because the waste that they have to deal with is not waste that they generate. So what we do is, if the community is willing and organized, we will come in, we'll teach them, go through a workshop with them around waste management practices, hopefully with an enterprise approach, so that it's livelihood generating also for them. So for example, our basically most established community, we buy their cleaned and segregated marine plastics. So I'll point you to, if you can see those sacks, those would be about 30 kilos of hand-cut sachets each. And again, basically, these communities don't have enough money to be able to buy 30 kilos of products that are wrapped in sachets. These are picked from the ocean, and they've incorporated into their daily life that habit of picking stuff off of the beach or the water, cleaning it up, segregating it, and hand cutting them in some cases. So we buy these from them, haul them off the island. I'm showing this because also to show you what it's like on the ground. Like these communities, for example, Tingloy Island, it doesn't even have a circumferential road. So traditional solutions around plastic, around waste management, like dump trucks, can't even work here. So we have to have a bangka haul the plastics out. And then since these have been prepared for upcycling or recycling, the intent is then to connect the communities to our entrepreneur and design connections, and really get more upcycled plastic products into the market. So that's an overview of what we do. And this work is really based on the intent of a circular model, where we divert plastics from the oceans, from the beaches, and create value for the communities by upcycling and recycling. So I mean, just a bit of aside on this, of course, if you talk circular economy and circular design, there are so many other strategies that have to do with creating a circular economy. But in our case, because we are dealing with waste that is already there, we are concentrating on the strategy around value recreation, upcycling, and recycling. So as you can see, to make the circular model work, we have to work with two communities, and actually more than this. But our core communities, of course, would be the coastal, the below poverty line coastal communities, who are our collectors. And then, that idea of generating more basic product development and getting more upcycled plastics into the market. So we have these two programs to hit the two ends of our circle, to kind of create or hobble together our little circular economy on the ground. So what I'd like to do is just take you through that journey, in terms of let's trace that and see who the actors are and where they are now, at least from our point of view. So in terms of readiness for the circular economy, what we've seen is, I mean, if there's anything what we're sure about is that among this lineup now of communities, capacitators, our actual upcyclers, recyclers, and consumers, the most ready are the communities. In fact, like for example, this is a photo from a workshop. We took all 15 barangays of Tingloy Island through a waste management design thinking workshop because they needed the help. So for example, of course, Sir Crispian would have mentioned RA 9003 earlier. The implementation of that rests squarely on barangay officers, but you can just imagine how capacitated they are. Not much in terms of actual basic waste management knowledge, and at the same time creating or designing a system for where they are, right? Given that they don't have plug and play solutions like your urban community would. So the communities, because they live with the problem, are quite ready for the circular economy. They just need capacitating for it. Happily, we have our capacitators. Of course, Dr. Peringit already mentioned the efforts of the government. From my end, what I've seen, one of the nicest projects that I've seen myself is this material recovery facility in Muntinlupa, where they turn their plastic waste into pavers. But apart from that, of course, we have the NGOs. And for example, Pure Oceans, we work closely with WWF. And as mentioned, we are part of programs within UNDP and USAID. So the bigger NGOs that have the funding, they help us, like smaller organizations or NGOs or community implementers, help us basically deliver interventions as funded or guided by them. So for example, UNDP's Ending Plastic Pollution Challenge is like an incubator, and Clean Cities Blue Ocean is really helping us create a more robust business plan for what we're doing. So the good thing with the NGOs is they're really going through the gamut of all the interventions needed to improve the waste management cycle. So for example, for Clean Cities Blue Ocean, and actually a partner we've been working with for the past 2 years now is Coca-Cola Foundation. And the focus on the work with Coca-Cola Foundation and USAID is in the establishment of material recovery facilities in Tingloy Island. So this is addressing, I think it's mentioned earlier, the need for more infrastructure. There's also, of course, I think the funders find a lot of interest in prototyping different collection schemes. So for example, we have a program funded by Coca-Cola, which is a Soli store, where basically we created it's like it's a refill station that also accepts plastic as a credit exchange for refillable home goods. So we find we need ways to, what are the more efficient ways, what are the more interesting for people ways to enjoin them to start collecting marine plastic waste. As I said, there's not much infrastructure. I was glad to see Ma'am Arlene here as well. So they've helped us put together what we call the Basura Bangka. So this is part of the whole, creating unique infrastructure for where we work. So the coastal and island communities, as I said, they need special help in waste management. And so the Basura Bangka is one of those explorations. Interesting for us also aligns with how we work. We work with WWF, for example, in Donsol and their Davao communities. We've taken what we do in Tingloy and applied it to their communities in Donsol and Davao. So for example, there are smaller communities there who have started upcycling enterprises. Like this one, we have Nanays who work with many different collection partners in order to create upcycled plastic products that they hand sew. A very important thing that the NGOs are doing is also developing a pipeline of circular economy startups. So if you're in this field, you'll see these logos quite a lot. They're in the areas of having alternatives in retail, having upcycling facilities, and of course collection startups. There are a lot of those, and it's a cute little collection of startups, and we always see each other in these hackathons and incubation programs run by the NGOs. So I would say the key thing for us though is we need basically a place to send our plastic once our communities have collected them. And the one that's very limited are our actual producers of products, so the upcyclers and recyclers. So our priority is to get products out of the plastic so that we can drive value back to the community. And for that, we only have Envirotech waste recycling and to a certain extent Sentinel upcycling to work with for that. To deal with the volume of plastic that we get to collect, we've started also working with Republic Cement in their EcoLoop program, where they use the plastics as for co-processing of their cement. So for me, actually, this is really the key issue. There aren't enough endpoints or value generating endpoints for plastic waste. So for example, this is the lineup of products of Enviritech. So nice, they have a lineup of products, but we need to both increase their capacity to take in waste that's been prepared for upcycling and also increase demand for these products. So on the consumer end demand, I think it's untapped. So what we're seeing is a lot of individual energy around interest, around participating in collection programs. For example, like what Ma'am Arlene was saying, and definitely Green Answers Eco Hub is quite popular. So it's very dependent on locale lang. So it depends whether you can participate in the circular economy as an individual, depends on what upcycling facilities or MRFs are available near you. But there's so much readiness for this, I would say, among consumers. There's also a lot of awareness and small habit changes having to do with zero waste lifestyle. So I think at the consumer level, people are aware of zero waste, the concept of a zero waste lifestyle, but not necessarily circular economy. But that's fine, they intersect at certain points, right? So I mean, to close, just from my point of view, the gaps that we're seeing, like even from operationally from our end, there is a need to increase capacity for upcycling and recycling, while also driving demand from the consumers for these products. And so not the economist, you guys are the finance guys. I'm hoping you can help drive the investments or the creation of that capacity for upcyclers and recyclers. We need more around the Philippines quickly. So yes, I hope we all get to collaborate soon. You can also come to where we work in Mabini, Batangas. Some of their members have joined us on cleanups. There's a lot of work to do, and so we're always open to collaborations because the problem is so big, we all have to work on it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Pia. Please stay on screen as we call back Arlene Tan Bantoto of Nestle and Romel Benig of Green Ants for a Q&A session. This will be moderated by Erwin Avante, the Chief Finance Officer of the Energy Development Corporation. Over to you, Erwin.
Yeah, thanks, Beth. The linear economy model of take, make, dispose amplifies the plastic crisis over the years. And today, we're glad to have with us the private sector representatives to talk about transitioning single-use plastics to a circular economy. So Arlene, Pia, Romel, good to have you here in Phoenix. No? So I wanted to start first with you, Arlene. No? And you've mentioned it in your presentation also, Romel and Pia. No? But a few weeks back when I was reading over the internet, I was not aware that actually the three of you have been collaborating. No? So probably if you can start with how did this collaboration came about, and how do you think we could increase collaboration with more parties moving forward?
Okay, thank you for that question, Erwin. So let me start with Romel. Romel actually is an ex-Nestle employee. And he was already in charge of our sustainability projects in the factories. So nasa puso na talaga ni Romel yung sustainability. And it was just but natural when he started his own business that he was into EcoBricks. Now, I have to give a disclaimer. I only joined public affairs and sustainability only a year ago. So all these collaborations took place before I came in, except for the ones with Pia. No? So our team was working with Pia on the boat. So maybe I'll give the floor to them to explain how the relationship started. But what I can share is today, we are actively talking to different stakeholders, whether it's government, it's NGOs, it's academe, or business people like Romel, social enterprises, to find solutions. Kasi, as you know, we don't have a circular economy yet. And that's why we do a bit of experiment here and there, like the boat, the motorcycle, Donsol, also with Green Ants, setting up EcoBricks. And we also talk to government just to see how we can share more expertise coming from our headquarters. I would say it's a hit miss. It doesn't work all the time, but I'm happy at least with Pia to hear how much all her projects are working. And of course, we support her to do more. Also with Romel, because as you know, we've collected 27 million kilos of plastic waste and we co-process it. Ideally, we want to give it all to Romel para lahat maging eco-bricks and even the lumber, to make different kinds of furnitures. But today, that's not the case. So I don't know if I answered your question, but this is how we do it now. So we hustle and we go connect with many different people. We look for projects that we feel can at least worthy of a pilot, and then from there we take it on.
Okay, thank you for that, Arlene. No? Over to you, Pia. Your love and passion for diving, gave you a firsthand experience of the plastic problems in the ocean. And I wanted to find out, you've chosen Verde Island, right, as your site right now. But how do you think we should be able to replicate this in other locations around the country?
Thanks, Erwin. Actually, what I'd say is we are currently in prototyping phase. So we're testing a lot of different projects actually with the different communities to see what works, what's efficient, what's incentivizing for the communities. And the end is to then package those once we've shown indicators of success, so that they can then be sent out to the other communities. As you said, actually, so we're basically Tingloy Island is right now our base and playground for the prototyping, and then with the UNDP funding, hopefully it will be Samuel Island as well in Davao. So we have kind of different populations naman. And yeah, once we have the results, we can share those. The intent is to hit all those provinces that bound Verde Island Passage, and kailangan talaga ng barangays ng help in kakaibang solutions that work for them kasi they aren't readily available now.
Okay. And when you were starting, you've mentioned that looking for partners was the main challenge, no? So if there's let's say a similar group who wants to actually put up their own social enterprise, what are the other challenges that you see are there for them, no?
It really depends where you are, I'd say. So for example, ako napunta ako sa working with communities because that was my sphere of influence. But basically look at all the activities under waste management. I think help and the startup approach would be quite valuable in those. So it can be in collection, segregation. So I've seen also technologies around automatically identifying waste para hindi kailangan manually magsisegregate. So collection, segregation, transportation of the waste, and of course the disposal. Well, value generating disposal sana.
Okay, we have several bankers in the audience, and I wanted to find out if funding is a problem. Is it, or is that a problem for you guys?
Well, I mean, given Romel's scale, I would ask him. From a startup, very small community perspective, we've survived the pandemic because of NGO and foundation funding. So I'd say like theoretically we're a startup, but right now we're operating like an NGO. So from that sphere, there is some, but we've also like been approached by funders talaga. And in our case, we're not seen as investment ready yet because we don't even have the financial statements for 5 years yet. But yeah, I would loop in Romel into that question too because he's had a bit more time in the market.
Okay, yeah, I'll go to Romel next actually. So Romel, you cited being part of the circular economy as part of your business model, right? And from the presentation, the plastic problem was an area of focus. But and you also showed several projects. So you are very commendable, no? But I'm sure from the start, from the very beginning, it wasn't like this, right? It was probably an uphill climb. Can you describe to us the journey? How did you start? What were the constraints that you had before? What went well? What didn't go well with you until today? Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that question, Erwin. You're right. It was really an uphill climb. I left the corporate world. I left Nestle in 2012. to start a social enterprise, and that's Green Ants. I thought that I was ready, having the corporate experience, but really entrepreneurship, especially social entrepreneurship, is really difficult and challenging. But of course, thanks to Nestle, our first EcoBrick machine and shredder were funded by Nestle. So because we did a pitch to Nestle, having this concept of creating a product like the EcoBrick. So Nestle approved the EcoBrick concept, and we also collaborated, and DOST helped us in developing the first shredder that we had before. So now that we have the product, the more challenging part really is developing the market, because we know very well that once we have the demand for the eco products, then we can process more plastics. Okay, because we are really looking at the end-to-end segment of the value chain. So that was the more challenging part. Initially, we were looking at B2C market. So I tried offering the EcoBrick to different hardwares, local hardwares, those who are who were going to build their own houses, but I had 100% rejection. That's a very high batting average. So I got rejected all the time, and then that's where we figured out that we had to do a pivot. Okay, so we focused on the B2B market and look for companies who are really into sustainability, responsible companies who really care for the future. And we were given the opportunity to share our story in the League of Corporate Foundations, and that really paved the way for our growth. So in terms of funding, we were trying to look for funding, but really that's another challenging part. When you are a startup, it's very difficult to look for funding. So we had to be creative, and I'm really sharing this kind of approach to fellow entrepreneurs, that we can look around and look for problems, and then come up with solutions and offer these solutions to organizations who will be willing to fund you. So I was also inspired by Nestle's creating shared value model. And because of that, we developed the social franchising model. So it's like a plug and play system. And I think that this can also be adopted by other social entrepreneurs like Pia. I would love to collaborate with you and share our experience. So we did this social franchising model and offered this to responsible companies. And there we're able to scale up our EcoHub operations. So now we are basically creating a network of EcoHubs or modern MRFs across the country. We are also creating a network of responsible companies who are willing to support this green initiative. So it's a long way to go, but looking back, it was really difficult, but all worth it.
Okay, there's a question in the chat box, Romel, that is related to this now, and just wanted to clarify: is the issue on the funding for collection or recycling, or probably both?
Both, because collection side, it's really difficult making it work. The cost of recycling is quite high. And one insight that we really learned when we are doing this, because we are into manufacturing, it's better for us to really look at several portions of the value chain for us to be profitable. Because if we will just be focusing on one segment, it's quite challenging. And also another insight that we had, people will not buy our products. Consumers will not buy our products just because we are green. The economics should make sense. And we learned to take that into consideration and incorporate that in the equation. And we have figured that out and would love to share what we have done to other social entrepreneurs out there.
Okay. Now, probably in relation to enticing other entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs to actually go into this types of products, are you okay to disclose that you've been profitable so far, so it should entice more people to actually go into this?
Yeah, we've been profitable, and I would like to really share that we're one of the fortunate ones who really thrived during the pandemic, and would like to thank our corporate partners, for all the support. Alam niyo po kung sino kayo. And in terms of profitability, we are experiencing rapid growth now. Compared to last year, we're growing around 4 times. And because of this, we attracted several impact investors. And this is one thing that I want to share with social entrepreneurs out there. There's a lot of impact investors now looking for this kind of initiatives. So we are under due diligence now, and hope to engage with one impact investor very soon. And this will really help us scale up what we're doing. Yeah, thank you for the question, Erwin.
Okay, good. And for you, Pia, I would suppose your upcyclers are also making money, no? So is that the case?
So we are not as lucky as Sir Rommel. Of course, he's quite established. Most of the upcyclers we work with are, I mean, even if they're big, like for example, Envirotech or Sentinel, who have been in the market for a while, I think in terms of actual revenue on product sales, parang that still needs to improve. And then of course we work with our smaller upcyclers also, like quite niche. So like there's a footwear designer who makes heels, or someone who's making art tiles. So quite small the volume. But yeah, we're working on it.
Okay, good to hear. Arlene, over at Nestle, very commendable, 100% recyclable or reusable by 2025, and then reduce the use of virgin plastics by 1/3, by 2025. And I think hearing from Romel and Pia themselves, I'm glad that corporates like Nestle has become an enabler to social enterprise to actually address these problems. But my question is, you still seen the net over the internet that there are some organizations like Greenpeace, for example, and Break Free from Plastic, who continue to criticize Nestle. So do you think you're not doing enough? And how do you think we will be able to stop these criticisms?
Okay, that's a very tricky question. Okay, so I've been in this role for a year, thereabouts, and I've been in business side for 28 years in Nestle. So you can say I come in with very fresh eyes. I was really impressed because I didn't know the depth and how much we've been investing in all these sustainability projects. From the farmers, training farmers to be more sustainable, not just looking at their yield, their income, to our operations. Alam ni Rommel yan, how much we try to reduce water and energy consumption, which is, by the way, because we have finance guys, it's good for the bottom line, but it's also good for the planet. That's why it's called creating shared value. And then now post-consumer waste. And all our factories in Luzon are now running on renewable electricity. Is it enough? Certainly not enough, because there's still a lot of work to be done. In fact, I shared that we recently announced last April that we are going to be net zero by 2050. And maybe the question is, ba't ang tagal? Because we don't have the solutions yet today. Because if we had, we'd be net zero today, like right now, right? And this whole discussion on plastic, this is really something that the entire industry is struggling with worldwide. Because if we had the solution today, we would go. In fact, if you look at our plastic to paper straws, moving to paper straw costs 4 times more. And even that whole experiment, can we do it? Because alam niyo yung mga bata, when they drink their Chucky, if you have kids, you know, gustong-gusto lang ngat-ngatin yung straw, no? And it takes them forever. They sip, they run around, they sip, di ba? I mean, for us, we just drink it straight. So we also had complaints from moms, nalulusaw yung straws nyo kasi paper na po siya. So there's a lot of mindset building, and also, of course, working with consumers, with even the supermarkets. Yes, it's not enough, and we know that. That's why we have a roadmap, we have a vision. We are really working with our R&Ds, but also externally. We have climatons, we have people like Rommel, Pia, to work it together. Kasi no one person and no one company has the solution. And I would be surprised if somebody comes in and say, I have the solution, diba? So yes, it's not enough. It's not fast enough because we don't have the solution, and we are really working together with our partners, with our stakeholders, with those who are willing to work with us to find the solution. It's really an uphill battle. I'm sure you all read the news and you know that COP26 is all over the news, right? And they say it's code red for humanity because it is. It is. And is the decision now to stop all plastic? Anong kakainin ng mga tao? I think that's the question, because today, plastic, unfortunately, is the most accessible. And for 80% of our population who live on single daily income, how will they eat, right? So I think those are the questions we also have to ask ourselves. And how can we get to the solutions faster?
Okay, thank you. I want to move on to quickly to next section of the forum and ask you guys, pick your brains with respect to some of the things that were discussed earlier today by our panelists, no? And this will just be quick. It's a true or false statement. So if you agree, just press the raise hand button. If you don't, then I don't have to do anything. So the first question that I have is, there was this mention about 2030, no, ambition. So by 2030, the Philippines can totally eliminate single-use plastic. So is that true or false for you? Again, there are no right or wrong answers.
Yeah.
So no one's racist. I would suppose it's false now. Quickly, anybody wants to share why they think it's not attainable?
Let me share some insights. From our end, we're looking at it as it's really a tall order, Erwin, because we have to put up the right infrastructures for an effective and efficient waste management system. We need to build an ecosystem where circular economy is really working. And the third one, the most difficult, is having the right mindset. So scaling up and changing the mindset of people, and it takes a generation. So we cannot do it in 2030. But this is not a lost cause. There's hope. Having people like Pia, other social entrepreneurs like their responsible companies, we see that there's hope really. So, but 2030, it's a tall order.
Okay, thank you. The next statement is, we have the necessary regulations, but enforcement is the problem. True or false? So we have the necessary regulations, but enforcement is the problem. So all of you are again false, I would assume, no? Any comment on that one?
Yeah, maybe I can comment on that.
Yeah.
I think we have a lot of regulations in place, and Crispin shared. Implementation can be better, but I also believe we've heard several discussions on EPR. So that's something that we really want to be implemented and mandatory, because it's really going to help in the whole circular economy. The rest, like the clean air, clean waste, I think this is, you have to change mindsets of 110 million people, diba? But I believe if we say, okay, if the government says we're going to do it, we're going to implement, then it can happen. But it's really the implementing. Pero yung EPR, there are other things like fiscal policies. Are we going to give tax breaks to companies who will be greener? right? Are we going to require them to share their ESG reports? Because today it's not yet mandatory. So things like this, I think there's still some room to allow for regulators, legislators to come up with policies that can accelerate further our road to net zero or even to regeneration.
Okay, thanks, Arlene. Thanks for that. Last statement, no? Charging the consumers is the single biggest solution to plastic waste problems. So charging the consumers is the single biggest solution to plastic waste problem. Do you agree or not? True or false? So no one's raising again. Probably Pia, you can take this.
Thanks, Erwin. I have a biased answer to that because because I work with the communities, I really think it's unfair that it's the communities who pay, right? So we are all operating on the assumption that plastic is cheap and accessible. But as also mentioned earlier, like if we think about the total cost of the plastic, including how much it costs to manage it well so that it doesn't pollute nature, it is actually quite expensive. So that decision of the use of plastic actually didn't come from the consumer. They have some responsibility, of course, assuming they had options, then they could choose a different type of product, right? But the choice of plastic packaging, for example, actually started in the boardroom. So I feel like basically, kind of like policies like EPR, for example, are all about making sure that companies include that cost of not polluting nature essentially as part of their operational cost for me. And so like buti na lang, you have like Arlene or Nestle and Coke who are starting to kind of operationalize EPR in a way. So you see these projects that they're doing, and also on a corporate level, the additionality that they're adding to, say, the recycling industry. But yeah, for me, the cost shouldn't be shouldered by the individuals. For EPR though, there is still responsibility for individual consumers also, but it shouldn't be solely them.
Okay. My last question for you guys is, how do you think we as a nation could be successful in transitioning single-use plastic to a circular economy? And if you can also add your closing statement. So probably we can start again with you, Arlene. Arlene, Pia, and then Romel.
So I think first is we need the government and the private sector together with NGOs, academia to work together to have the policies in place. Because if you don't have the policy, that means nothing's going to happen. And today there is a lack of clear policies. Example again, EPR. So that's the first thing. And second is, while we had this discussion about do we charge consumers, I also don't agree because I'm also a consumer. But definitely what I will say is we have to involve the consumers into the picture because the consumers also need to be responsible. We need to segregate our trash. We also need to look, do we really need to buy these items, etc. So it's a mindset. So I think it's a tall order, no? I don't even know when we can get to that point, as Romel said. Parang ang hirap niyang i-imagine. But of course, anything is possible if you have a strong leadership in place with all stakeholders really working together with a common vision. So with that, I'd really like to thank for this opportunity to share what we do in Nestle, and also happy to see our friends in the industry and also NGO, Romel, Pia, Christian. Thank you. I learned a lot from everyone, and looking forward to putting together more projects and having that waste-free future. Thank you.
Thank you. Pia?
Okay, Erwin. I mean, that's a hard question. I'll come from, as I said, our on-ground experience. So what we've seen is that people are ready and are willing to change. What's lacking is the design of the system that's appropriate to them and the infrastructure. So for me, like, yes, policy is part of that, and the actual infrastructure that capacitates them to participate in a waste-free future, that's what's really needed. Thanks, everyone, and I hope to collaborate with you in the future.
Okay, thanks, Pia. Romel?
Yeah. In this very volatile environment with a lot of uncertainties, complexities and ambiguities, collaboration is key. And if we collaborate with each other, we can definitely address this problem. We cannot do it alone, neither the government nor the private sectors. But if we combine forces and collaborate, we have a good fighting chance to address this big waste problem. And now is the time to act. So looking forward to collaborating with everyone. Let's clean up the world and the Philippines, one brick at a time. Maraming salamat.
Thanks, Romel. No? So there you have it. No? That's all the time that we have. The single-use plastic has been a growing problem that continue to plague our environment and our society. No? But together with the private sector support of addressing innovative ways of packaging products, doing cleanups, educating people to eliminate the use, recycle, and upcycle plastic, as well as patronize eco-friendly solutions, we could transform or transition single-use plastics to a circular economy. So I would like to thank again Arlene Tan Bantot of Nestle Philippines, Pia Ocampo of Pure Oceans, and Romel Benig of Green Ants in sharing their views. Back to you, Beth.
Thank you, Erwin. So the message is very clear. We need to create a circular economy for plastic. And to do that, we can sum it up into 3 necessary actions based on what the speakers have presented. First is to eliminate all problematic and unnecessary plastic packaging through redesign, innovation, and new delivery models. Second is to innovate to ensure that the plastics we do need are reusable, recyclable, or compostable. And third, circulate all the plastic items we use to keep them in the economy and out of the environment. As you have heard in today's forum, there are a lot of ongoing initiatives from the various players, such as the government and the private sector. But I'm sure you all agree it's still a long journey. And we know these initiatives are not enough. It needs each one of us, yes, you and me, to do our share in creating a circular economy for plastic. After all, there is no planet B. And on that note, I would like to thank our speakers for graciously providing their time, knowledge, and skills in this forum. Ms. Jazlyn Lee, Dr. Enrico Parinit, Dr. Annabel Briones, Commissioner Crispian Lau, Ms. Arlene Tan Bantoto, Mr. Romel Benig, and Ms. Pia Ocampo. Thank you also to our panel moderators, Mr. Frankie Saak and Mr. Erwin Avante, and our Environment Committee Chair, Mr. Chito Oreta. On behalf of the Phoenix Research and Development Foundation, we thank all of you for attending this forum. We hope we were able to steer all of you into action to do your part if you're not doing it yet. We hope to see you in our next forum very soon. We would like to also ask the speakers and panelists to stay for a few minutes after the close of the session for a photo op. And to everyone, thank you again. Have a good afternoon and please be safe.